So, method or technique number one. The way this works is against all my fiber and being in my soul to do it this way. This is the way your 80 to 90-year-old grandpa used to make cabinets. I see this online all the time, and it gives me shivers that people follow along with this to some regard. So I'm going to do it because everybody seems to do this online. So I'm going to show you a little bit of a better way to do it if you are going about doing it this way. This is the most simplistic, most rudimentary, and the weakest way to build a cabinet possible that I've seen online. I hate to be that guy, but I have to stress my opinion. We build so many of these cabinets, and this is what we do for a living, and this is not the best way. So what you'll find is pine 2x2s. What people will do is glue or clamp them down in the position that they have drawn the line in. So you can see the line that we've done. Okay, so this is going to be technique number two. You saw us do all that, but we want them both to line up because we're making them on the same cabinet. We're just doing one way on one side, one way on the other, so you can see the difference. So we want the edge of our pieces to be flush with the edge of this. Okay, there's nothing wrong with this style of cabinet. It looks the way it looks, and it's an aesthetic thing only. It doesn't make it stronger or weaker. It's the supports that we're putting on the inside. These pine 2x2s have no strength to them. If they have a lot of surface area for glue, which is great, but when people are putting screws into them, they move over time because it's so soft. If you're beating on your machine and moving it around and rocking it back and forth all the time, those screws are gonna just kind of not give you a ton of strength over time. What most people will do is they countersink the screws on the opposite side of this, on the outside of their cabinet, so on the profile on the outside, and then they screw into these from that side and then cover the screw heads with Bondo or wood filler, that type of a thing. That's kind of a big no-no. If you're moving around, especially a cabinet, it's different if it's your kitchen cupboard that you're barely using or rocking around, but if you're gonna beat on it with two grown men and joysticks playing Street Fighter, it's not the way to go, especially if you're gonna put an expensive decal or something like that on the outside and you're plugging the holes with wood filler or Bondo, and then they're obviously gonna come loose if those screws and stuff move. You're just giving yourself a lot more places for points of failure, as well as like ugly aesthetics and stuff, because if you don't finish those things properly, they're not gonna hold properly, and they're gonna look ugly, and they're gonna be hard to fix. So we're gonna show you a little bit of a better way, and we're gonna build it from the inside. Okay, so those screws are gonna go from the inside down into this wood. We're gonna clamp stuff, we're going to screw it down, and we're gonna glue the living hell out of it. So first of all, what we're doing is doing our outline so that we know where our outside wood pieces are going to line up with. And then we're gonna get into some miter cuts and some fun things here. But first we're gonna put in these blocks. These are the beginning foundation of everything that we're doing. So you're gonna wanna take your time on this, and I'm gonna kind of come back and forth to this so I can show you us doing it as it's going along, and I'll explain why certain things look a certain way while we get there. All right, so we're gonna get started putting this bad boy together in hopefully record time here, but I'm gonna show you what we're doing before we get ahead of ourselves and you. So these blocks are all lined up to the lines that we have on the outside of our cabinet to line up where we want our pieces to butt up to. So this is just kind of a dry fit layout. You can see on the actual pine boards themselves, we've put little dots on them where we're gonna put in countersink holes for our screws. Okay, so the reason why you want to countersink this is because the MDF is a lot harder than the pine, so you'll find that it'll just spin, and then the pine will kind of go up to the top of the screw, and then it's all bad news. So you want to try to do some sort of pilot in there. It has nothing to do with the countersink. If you don't want to countersink, you don't have to. It'll do it to itself through the screw when you get into the MDF, but you just want to make sure that you do a pilot hole for your MDF. All right, so you can see on the bottom here, we have a big gap here. You'll see how that works out. We're gonna put a 2x4 in chunk in each corner for our foot base. And you can see that we're looking at setting up our first piece here. So we're gonna go ahead and do that, but before we can go with all the other countersink and set up on that, you can see that we have a hole there that we can't get to if we put this one in. So we're gonna put this piece in first, and then I'll come back to you here and we'll show you how we do the rest. All right, so glue first. Butt it up nice and sweet. MDF, it makes perfect 90. Look at those joints. They're sweet. Anyway, let's see if this goes nice. With this block being so small, this wood likes to split. So hopefully we won't have that happen again on camera. Oh yeah, look at that. Nice and tight, like a toiga. All right, so we're using 2-inch deck screws with a Robertson head. I don't know if they have them in the States. I know Robertson's kind of a Canadian thing. So he has a pilot hole already drilled in this, but it didn't go through the MDF. So we're just kind of piling it into the MDF. And he also had glue on the other two sides of that pine where it's touching the MDF. Oh, now you know she's good. All right, so this piece is in here nice and good. It's sturdy, it'll hold. That glue will just, when it dries up, it'll just get a little bit stronger. And we're gonna move on to the next piece here. I'll show how this one's done. And then we'll go and do the rest of the pieces and come back after it's all set up. Now this is just the way we designed it for our base. We'll show you how we're doing that throughout the process here. We're leaving this big gap here, but what you're really concerned about is the outside part of your paneling. If there's a little gap here, like you see that there, we're going to be putting clamps and stuff on this, so that will squeeze it all together when we're done. These are mostly just placeholders. But as you can see here, as he's going over all that, I'm going to show you in the bottom left corner here. This is the reason why I'm not a fan of this this design and layout. Until it's all together and you clamp it, you get this kind of lever action going on, right? The strength is here, not here. The design and aesthetics are here. This is where it cracks. This is where problems happen. That's the aesthetics. We don't want that. So when we build in the other techniques, you'll find out how we get away from not having that become an issue. But yeah, if you screw from the outside, it holds it a little bit better, but it also creates another problem with the aesthetics for filling in all the holes and creating more work for yourself. All right, so pretty basic. If you want to use that to guide you. It's too late because you already did your holes, I guess. All right, so you can see he's lining it up, making sure that we're going to be perfect 90 there. Takes about an hour or two for this glue to dry. It probably takes about 10 to 20 minutes before you can't really move it at all anymore, so it won't be able to manipulate it. So once you get going on this, you're going to want to get your both sides done as fast as possible when you start putting in your actual paneling here, so that you can clamp it together or put weights on it or that type of thing, so that it can get that, we can get rid of this kind of a thing real quick. Okay, we're going to clamp this down and leave it so that it stays the way that it is, because we'll probably leave this either for the next hour or two, overnight or whatever, because we're doing this stuff in increments. But you're going to want to do as much of this at one time as possible. So we're going to finish up all the way around the perimeter, and I'll come back and do a flyby. All right, so we've fastened all these cleats in here. So they're all the 1.5 by 1.5, 2 by 2s pine. We had to make some adjustments as we go along, as will you. So make sure that you dry fit all your other cut pieces to this as well. All your pieces should be cut for this before you go ahead with this, so you see how they fit. You know what I mean? Like, you have to take your speaker piece and see how it fits on here and make sure that it's done properly. On the back here, where we've had to make modification, was cut that a little bit shorter so that we can get our monitor feed up in this spot when we're done, and you'll see how that goes too when we start sliding around monitor stuff. If you're really interested in that, you can fast forward to the monitor video and come back when you're done. But yeah, so we are going to fasten all these in from the inside. The only one we cannot do is the one that I'm showing you here. Obviously, we can't get a drill in that small space, so we are going to be drilling from the outside, and we will countersink those, and then that'll allow us to show you how to bondo or fill that properly to go from there, so that they all kind of correspond. If you don't want to build it from the inside like we're doing, you would do it this way from the front on the outside, and then do that all the way around. It's just harder to do that when you can't see these things from the other side. When you do it this way, it also makes it a little bit stronger and more aesthetically pleasing. So we're going to play around with some of these angles here. You can see here, this one for us is a perfect 45, so we're just going to cut it so that we can leave our front piece with our audio amp straight. So a straight 90, as you can see there, so we can just put it straight in. We're also going to show you this here, where we're only going to do a 90 to this point. Okay, this actually line is actually for the other side, not this one, but you can see that it's on that 45 as well. We are going to leave this gap here, and then we're actually going to fill it. So this is the wrong way to do it, but you can do it if you need to. And then I would fill it with at least some sort of silicone or something so that it doesn't split, move, or do anything. But we're actually going to cut a piece that's going to fill that gap right there, and then glue it on both sides so that it won't move, right? And we'll clamp it all in and get it all good. But I just want to show you the two ways of doing it, just in case you want to do a shortcut. This is the way to fix it. Okay, so we're getting ready to cut this 45. You can see that he's got the angle set up, and we got it set up on the saw. And we're gonna go hard here. So what we're trying to do is get that 45 to be exactly to the tip edge of this wood. So it's opposite his line, but we've already measured it out, so we know what we're doing. So what I said before, where we're going to do that fix and we're going to put a wedge in, instant wedge. All right, so we're going to use this for later. Try not to waste anything at all. And we're going to come over here and put our piece in to dry fit it. Always dry fit it, just in case you screw it up. Now you can see that this here comes past the line quite a bit. That's fine, as long as we get full coverage on our next piece that comes in here, so that it gives you that structural strength, the integrity of that glue. See if I can get this thing to focus a little bit better. All right, put this up. So now you can see how these pieces fit together. A little bit back. Looks almost perfect. Now with a little bit of glue, clamping that together, you can also throw some pins and stuff in there, and you can also do like a gusset or a cleat or whatever in the back there if you want to get all fancy with your angles to give it more support. But the glue on these, on the MDF, holds it pretty good. Unless you drop it down the stairs, it's not going to separate. So yeah, that's what she's starting to look like. Once we sand that, you're going to get a nice round kind of edge there. It's going to look pretty sweet. And then in this gap that's right there, we're going to take that piece that came off of here and put it in there and glue both sides to fix that. So I just wanted to show you how that works as a technique fix slash whatever you want to call it. You're going to run into all different things, so this is just one extra thing in the arsenal to get some things done. All right, we did a little bit of work to this one, so I want to show you what we did instead of going through the process of how we did it. It didn't really matter because you saw the last clip there. We just added those shims that we said we would right here, right? So what we're doing essentially is dry fitting everything here. This one's tacked in with a couple screws, but there's no glue, no nothing, so that we can take it apart to show you how it's going to go back together. So we put a little tape here while the glue dries. Here we knew that we had that gap, so we took our little wedge piece and we put that in there and glued it, and we left it there for an hour or two, and now she's dry and good to go. This one we made an adjustment on here that we didn't like the way it was fitting, and then it ended up leaving a bit of a gap in this miter cut. This isn't the nicest miter cut, and obviously because it juts out here, but for these purposes this is more than fine. If you want to get away from this type of a gap, then you'd have to miter this piece as well. You can't leave it at a 90 because it has to meet that over there. So then you would basically divide your cut there so that it's half and half. This was just easier to do because of a 45 that was on there. It doesn't make it less stable or anything, especially when you shim it like this, but this is the way to fix that. The angles that we're dealing with on here, you're not really going to get away from anything like that too much. We have other techniques that we're going to be showing you that are a lot, give you a little bit of a nicer finish and that type of a thing where you're not plugging in spots and holes and stuff here. A lot of the people that show you how to do stuff online that make these cabinets out of MDF won't show you these close-up things to show you what they've done. It just shows you, hey, the outside, this is what it looks like, and we're moving on. They have to fill those gaps. If you don't fill this area in here with our shim that we put in the back, that's actually like super weak, okay? Then what can happen is if you put any force on the front here, it'll just crack open or it'll constantly move. So you need to fill it with something. The harder the better, and these shims and leftover pieces are perfect. If you don't, like I said, if you really don't like the look on the inside there, obviously don't do it like this. Then you can divide the actual cut here. For that, we just cut them to the exact size and we pre-cut it instead of measuring when we do that. So then we would have given it maybe another ½ inch so that we could cut that angle there and divide the gap. But yeah, that's the way she goes. Okay, so we're gonna take this off and I'll show you the back again. Sorry, I'm kind of going back and forth here. So like I said, we dry fit this in here so so that it'll hold and it'll stay. We wanted to know where we are with it. We actually did that to this whole profile. So I'm going to give you the flyby of it with this out of here. All right. So basically we set all of our pieces up and we drilled all of our pilots and countersinks, right? So you can see the pieces there already have their countersink in them. We have them pre-cut. We have them ready to go just for purposes for this video. You can see on here we already have a small angle cut because we dry fit it all. Okay, so this is the way you're going to want to do this. You want to cut all your pieces. So you put in this here and then you measure your line so that this piece comes in and it goes to exactly where you want it to go. So you're going to draw your lines and do all that, and then measure these pieces, cut them, dry fit them before you glue them and do all that fun stuff. You don't want to start gluing and not have everything the way you want it because there's no turning back without destroying the wood. So now we're going to add all the glue and put all the pieces in so you can see that in real time. And then we're going to move on to our next technique to build the other profile on this one, which is glimpse over there. All right, so let's give her. All right, so this is the profile that we have that we were starting out with. We had just the blocks kind of sitting around. We hadn't had them measured out, cut, or put in exact place, but it kind of showed what we had before. Now we have these glued down, they're screwed down, they're ready to rock. We dry fit all the pieces. that we need for our cabinet, top, bottom, back, all that fun stuff. All right, so the way we did that was we put in our blocks. We have it where we want it to be on the edge of our wood, like so, right? Then we measured out where they're gonna meet back here, right? And then we take and, you know, bevel our edge like so that it's all good. You do that in a dry fit, and then you can take your screws and put in your pilot and that type of a thing, countersinks and stuff. Then with that, you can make sure that everything's in the spot that it needs to be. It's nice and tight, looks really good. And then we go from there. So we are gonna glue everything in now. We're gonna make sure that everything goes in nice and snug, and you'll see how our little dry fit scenario beforehand helps with all that. So, ready to rock. Do you want to put glue on the other side of that? On your side where your hand is? There we go. Can't forget, every place there's a contact for your wood, you want to make sure that you have glue and that it's bare wood, obviously. This MDF's great because you can just glue them together and they hold really well. The other thing with the dry fit is that one, you know it's going to be nice and snug, and then it's easy this way. You don't have to hammer on those screws to get it to where you want it to be. And the other thing too is you don't want any surprises. You don't want it to move out of joint and that type of a thing, right? You want to make sure that it butts itself up to all the other fun stuff. Now this front piece that we're putting on, it's already all one piece. I want to show you the inside of this before. I know it kind of went around it before, but I want to show you this side of it, okay? Like I said, the glue holds it pretty well. I mean, if you smash it against the floor or something, it's going to break. But when we did this, we glued these two pieces together, right? Then you let that set and dry. Then we glue these two pieces together, or vice versa. It doesn't matter, but just do one joint at a time. Don't try to do all three unless you either fasten them into your cleats and they're like not going to move at all, or you can clamp them down and stuff. But with angles like this, it's going to be really hard to clamp. You're going to want to use like tape and that kind of a thing. All right, so we're going to install this bad boy all as one piece. Now another trick too, just because I'm in the habit of showing you these things, is that shim here. All right, so the reason for this shim is there's a gap, and I'll tell you the reason why there's a gap is because when we put this type of thing in and you're doing your screws, if you don't use a countersink and you're drilling through pine into MDF, as I mentioned before, the MDF is a lot harder than the pine, so you'll feel it's like it almost skips, right? So you put your screw in, it'll go right through the pine, but then it doesn't want to go into the MDF. So then it'll skip a beat, and if it skips that beat, it kind of wobbles out the hole in your cleat piece or your pine piece. That's why I don't like using these too much. And then when it wobbles it out, when you tighten it down, no matter what happens, it'll actually move it. All right, it's really hard to be perfect with these. I'm not a huge fan. As I said, I'll keep saying it over and over again. But that's when we put the shim in there like that, that's so that there's no gaps, there's no nothing. That we can take a fen tool, a little saw blade, all that stuff, and just cut it off on the line there so that you won't see it anymore and it's gone. All right, so we're moving on to the next pieces. So this one here on the front, this one was the one that I said we couldn't get from behind with the screws, just because there's a cleat in the way on the other side. So we have we've pre-drilled our holes with a countersink, so they're nice and flush like that. So then we'll probably use a Bondo or a wood filler to fill in there. I would strongly suggest using Bondo more than a wood filler, but depends on what you're comfortable with. Bondo won't flex, stretch, move, do anything. If you use a wood filler, it may or may not shrink over time and do all that stuff. It'll weaken, that type of a thing, where the Bondo won't. So we're really taking our time on this here. We could actually blast this off in like 5 minutes, kind of a thing, after the way we had it set up here. So that's what you want. You want to set yourself up prior so that this part of the installation is unbelievably easy and fast. You want to do all this before the glue dries. If you don't, then that's where you run into problems if you have to adjust after that glue's in there. I can guarantee you, if it's been in there, especially with MDF, if it's the glue's on there for 5 to 10 minutes, you'll start destroying wood if you have to try to pull it apart, because that wood glue just absorbs right into the wood. It absorbs right in. Right, and then you see how he had to like back off the screw and then go back in and tighten it up again. The reason being for that is, as I said before, the different densities in the wood. All right, so that's just the way it goes. So the other thing we've got here, if you kind of saw this, is a smaller cleat. This cleat we are going to just nail in with the nailer. You can take small screws and screw it in. You can just use glue and then kind of use a clamp to go in there. The reason being for that is that's basically going to be the door stop / rail for our back door. All right. Don't worry about that one. So then that will stop the door from going inside the cabinet. And then there'll be a lock at the top and there'll be a block on the bottom that goes on the inside. So that's the way they did the old school doors on there. And yeah, you can just move to our door video on how to put it together, and then we'll show you that when we're all said and done. All right, so this is technique number 1. It's not my favorite. It'll hold, it'll do its thing. The bigger the cabinet that you're building, the harder it is for this to work and to get working properly. A lot of guys will show you this technique by screwing from the outside of the cabinet, and it makes it look horrible. This is a way better finish, and the structural integrity of it is the same. Now, one thing that I'll tell you on this is that normally you would go up here. So everywhere you have a 90 where the wood meets, you're going to be putting this type of cleat into there. So the 2x2 is going to go up here, all the way around. You're going to line your entire cabinet with it. You'll have it in the back here, going up right there as well. We're going to swap this out because we're doing technique number 3 here on the second half of this. So we're going to flip it over and do it a different way so that it's nice and easy and straightforward for you to see. The technique of the way this is done is pretty much the same regardless of the cleat system that we use. So I hope that makes sense. I'll keep clarifying it and you'll see it in the end when we have it all set up. All right, so this is the way she looks. Starting to look like an arcade, folks. Right, moving on.